Hello everyone, my name is Mairéad Gould. I'm Head of Tertiary Education Monitoring and Review with QQI, Quality and Qualifications Ireland. And I'm delighted on behalf of QQI colleagues and colleagues from the Institute of Technology Carlow to be able to present our findings to you on an evaluation of the efficacy of a virtual institutional review process. So just to give you a little bit of background, first, QQI, Quality and Qualifications Ireland, is the state agency with responsibility for coordinating the cyclical review process of all higher education institutions. And as with many agencies across the world, our review schedule was thrown into disarray in spring of this year, and it was subsequently agreed to go ahead with a pilot virtual institutional review visit to Institute of Technology Carlow in June. And this, of course, was a new departure for us. We hadn't had any experience of conducting a virtual site visit. So we were very anxious, I suppose, to evaluate the process and in particular to get some insights and evidence with regards to the efficacy that would give us confidence in the process. So in advance of the visit, a student-led briefing was conducted by the National Student Engagement Programme, and thanks to colleagues there for their engagement in that. And we've conducted a full evaluation of the review. So the purpose really of the presentation today and our engagement with ECOF is to present the findings of this evaluation. So in this evaluation, we were attempting to address a number of questions. Was the fundamental question being, does conducting an institutional review virtually impact on the efficacy of the institutional review process? And can we and providers and indeed other stakeholders really have confidence in the process? And in addition, there was a number of supplementary questions. So how does the virtual institutional review impact on the review team members' ability to engage and collaborate with institutional representatives and other stakeholders, and indeed the capacity of students and stakeholders to engage with the review team and with the process itself. And we were also keen to evaluate the design elements, both from the institution's perspective and from the agency's perspective. So what worked well and perhaps what didn't work well, and what might we need to change. So our methodology is we conducted the pilot review in June. We had a focused feedback session with both the review team and the institution. We conducted a survey of review team members, institution representatives, stakeholders and students. And we also had a focus group, a very interesting focus group with students. And we conducted a comparability analysis with other reports, institutional review reports for similar institutions. So coming first to our survey, and we had participants from a range of stakeholders in our survey, and the questions focused around the efficacy and efficiency of the virtual review process, and participants were asked to comment and make suggestions on improvements in the process. And you can see there, it was in particular for question 2, which is really reassuring. I found the virtual review to be effective and robust. So we had quite a large number and percentage there agreeing and strongly agreeing with that statement. And the online delivery of the process briefing was effective. So again, a very strong endorsement of the online methodology for the process. So again, the feedback being very positive. The majority of participants confirmed they were able to engage with the review team. So I was able to establish effective engagement with the review team during the online process. The virtual review process allowed for open and honest discourse. And again, very strong agreement and very strong endorsement. So 97% of stakeholders in the survey expressed confidence in the efficacy of the process and its outcomes. And I have to say, from our perspective, that's really reassuring. And given this was the first virtual methodology from our perspective, and indeed from the institution's perspective, it's a very reassuring, very positive outcome. And this again is a summary of some of the commentary, just capturing some of the commentary from the survey. So in my opinion, the session I was involved in went well. Each of us had an opportunity to contribute. The process was efficient, engaging and rigorous. So again, really positive endorsement and really rich positive feedback through the survey. So in addition to the survey, we conducted a focus group with students from IT Carlow, students that had met with the review team and participated in the review process. So 7 students representing a cross-section of students across the institution met with myself and my colleague Mairéad Boland for quite an informal discussion, and again a really overwhelming response to the virtual review visit. So this captures some of the commentary that was made at that focus group meeting. So overall an enjoyable experience, well organised, easy to talk, relaxed in own environment. So some students made the point very clearly that actually, because they were able to dial in or link in to the review from their own home or their own environment, it actually made it a less intimidating process and less like an interview. And indeed, one of the benefits of the virtual EQUOC this year is that we are able to bring these students to you and give you some insights into the discussion of the focus group. So we have included some extracts here with some of the students' commentary, which I think you'll find very insightful and indeed very positive.
Again, I wouldn't possibly be the best answer to these questions, but I'm pretty sure everyone else would feel possibly the same, because they wouldn't have that much of experience with institutional review. They've literally been thrown into the deep end, the dark end. So to have something like that prior to an institutional review, I think it's very beneficial to those who might feel a little bit daunting because they're not too sure exactly what it is. So it's a nice stepping stone into the institutional review.
Yeah, which is a fair point, because it's something we're certainly looking at exploring with other reviews that we'd build in as part of the process of institutions, and the and the Students' Union are open to doing that. It does, as you say, perhaps take some of the mystery out of it and some of the kind of fear factor out of it as well, which is beneficial. So I suppose the review itself, and really, the objective today is to kind of focus on the virtual platforms, so an engagement with the team through that platform. So, did you find that effective, or it worked, or we're just kind of interested in exploring how you found that process?
The process of which now? Sorry.
Engaging with the review team, so using this
apologies.
platform, and I suppose through the virtual platform in particular, as opposed to being around the table face to face.
Yeah, well then I can speak first. So I actually met the panel in person when they first came down. So that was when they very first came to the college, and that was a little bit daunting. And then for all that then to be changed online, everyone was very confused at first, because obviously now we're put in the dark. We don't know exactly how we're going to approach the questions or how it's even going to run. But I think that the prior communication was essential to it working and running smoothly. And that was, the times, who's going to be on, what time you're on, how to actually, a list of instructions of how you're going to join the meeting, who's going to speak, how long you're going to speak for, really helped ease the nerves. So it's all the prior communication before the actual institutional review. And once you're in the panel, then it's a nice, comfortable, the panel introduces themselves, everyone in the panel, they all speak and they all tell you, right, it's going to be comfortable, this is what we're going to do. And it's very easily explained. It's almost like an informal meeting, where it's actually not, because it's formal. So it makes you feel comfortable, it makes you feel relaxed, and then you just speak about your own expertise, your own knowledge, your own area. So I found it ran very smoothly that way. I don't know if anyone else has things to come in on.
Yeah, great, thank you. Anybody else want to come in there?
I think everyone has their mics mute, so it makes it a little bit difficult. I know there's a few things in the chat box.
Do you think it would have been a different experience had it been on site? Do you think you would have felt as comfortable on site as you did virtually?
Again, I'll answer. I think if it was on the online experience, kind of made it feel a lot more comfortable. Now, obviously, we don't know exactly how.
Another thing that was quite important, with the access to the internet, was that it gave some people who might not have been able to make it to Carlow, to the actual institute, sit down face to face. It gave them the chance to be able to actually still be part of the meeting. I know in some cases I might not be able to make one of those meetings because I'm tied to something else here at home, and to take an hour and sit down in front of the computer was much better than taking an hour to drive there, sit there for an hour and drive home again. So it really, it freed everything up for me to be able to do it that way.
And I mentioned earlier that as part of the preparation for the pilot, NSTEP, the National Student Engagement Programme, had conducted a briefing for those students that were to participate in the review. And they also conducted a follow-up survey to the briefing. And again, some really positive feedback on this process. And students in the main felt that it was very informative and really aided their understanding and participation in the process. So it's certainly an element that we would be incorporating within the design process for the institutional reviews. So we also, of course, sought feedback from the review team on how they felt the virtual process had gone, and overall they felt it was a very effective process. They got a very good sense of the organisation of the institutions, a culture and strengths and weaknesses. This team did have the advantage of having met beforehand and having been in the institution as part of the planning and preparation for the visit. And they did find that helpful. I suppose the previous on-site visit had been very helpful. The team had worked very well together in putting together a targeted list of questions. And again, they made the point that worked very well in advance. There was a challenge with this team in that the chair, Elsa Nunez, you can see there, and you have a clip of Elsa's feedback and reflections on the process. But Elsa's based in the States, so there was a challenge in time zones. And that did lead to, I suppose, a longer review period. So some of the team did feel that a more condensed timeline would have been preferable. And they also commented on the frequent review team meetings, which were built in as part of the design element in the process. That again, that worked very well.
If you are thoughtful in your approach, thorough in your preparation, and dedicated to a professional, candid outcome, a virtual accreditation visit can be successful. And in light of the continued presence of COVID-19 across the globe, I suspect we will need to take the lessons learned and be prepared to follow this path for some time to come. Based on my own experiences, I think we are well prepared to do that. Thank you.
And we also sought the institution's perspective, so from the president, from the vice president and registrar and deputy registrar. So again, this captures, these comments here are some of the comments which were which came back from the institution. So fundamentally, it worked for the institution. The briefing of staff and stakeholders on the virtual process worked very well. So the institution had briefed their staff on how the methodology would work in terms of the virtual process. The institution felt it was a comprehensive and fair process. It aligned with the institution's perspective, expectations of the review process, and the pre-planning element was identified as an essential element that again worked very well. So very positive feedback and endorsement of the process from the institution. And lastly, within our methodology, we did a high-level comparison between this report and the institutional review reports of 3 similar institutions. And this wasn't comparing the detailed recommendations or findings, but a comparability in terms of the number of recommendations, accommodations, and the report length. And there was no marked differences identified between the final report for Institute of Technology Carlow and the reports from other similar institutions. So again, there was no cause for concern there. So just coming back to our questions, our fundamental question, which we wanted to address, and that is, does conducting an institutional review virtually impact on the efficacy of the institutional review process? And the supplementary question, so how does the virtual institutional review impact on review team members' ability to engage and collaborate, and the capacity of students and other stakeholders to engage with the process? And our final question, what are the design elements that need to be considered both by the QA agency and by the institution? So taking the first of these, which is the efficacy, and really it's very clear from the outcomes of our survey and our focus group that there is confidence in the robustness and outcomes of the institutional process through the virtual platform. There was a wide range of stakeholders surveyed, and all stakeholders confirmed confidence in the process, and we were really reassured by that emerging evidence. So the virtual process did not in any sense impact negatively on the efficacy of the review. Looking at engagement and collaboration, review team, stakeholders overwhelmingly were happy with the level of engagement. And of course, it was noted by the review team and indeed with the institution that they missed that face-to-face engagement, and they missed, not being able to visit the institution on site and meet the people and network. But overall, in the context of completing the review, they were very happy with the engagement and collaboration. And indeed, I suppose the students noted that the virtual platform facilitated and enhanced engagement from their perspective. So I think that was an interesting finding. There were some challenges, and I suppose one of the challenges, a very practical challenge, was the chair was located in the States, so there was a time zone difference, which meant the review meetings couldn't start until lunchtime or midday. So that just presented some challenges in terms of the scheduling. So lastly, in the evaluation, we wanted to consider and revisit some of the design elements of the virtual review. So, what do we learn? And I want to share some of these with you. This list is not by any means comprehensive. We have very detailed guidelines. We have since put together since this pilot review, but just to share some of the elements with you. And the first was that the review team had a dedicated virtual meeting space. So they had a Microsoft Teams meeting room that was specific for the review team only, and that worked very well. We had smaller stakeholder groups, and that meant all stakeholders in the meeting were able to engage. And we also split into parallel sessions. So I suppose instead of on-site cafe workshops, we had a number of parallel sessions for stakeholders, staff, and external stakeholders. And again, that worked very, very well. The Institute of Technology Carlow established a really comprehensive online library, and that was a dedicated indexed suite of documents on a OneDrive that was available to the review team. Obviously, they were not on site to access documentation. So again, that was just a fantastic resource for the team. And IT Carlow also put together some videos and virtual tours of the institution, just to give, I suppose, the review team that sense of the institution. And again, that was very positively received by the review team. There were daily meetings between the review team and the institutional coordinator, David Denieffe, the registrar, and that enabled, I suppose, the team and the institution to collectively address any issues that may have arisen on the previous day, or indeed preempt any problems that might arise. In the schedule, we did build in additional breaks for the review team, and we've learned that really is essential, that the virtual process is quite concentrated, and they really do need to they need some downtime, and they need some time as a team themselves. The online student briefing in advance worked very well. We had very positive feedback from the students that participated in the review on the benefits of the briefing, and they really felt it had taken the mystery, I suppose, a fear factor out of the briefing for them. So that's something that we would certainly be hoping to incorporate in future. I have to commend, I suppose, the review team, the institution, and indeed my colleagues in QQI on the advanced planning. There was really intense planning and preparation by all. So that collaborative work was really an element of success for the process, and very, very detailed planning. And that's not to say that things didn't go wrong, that there were some connectivity issues. We did allow, where stakeholders couldn't engage in particular sessions, we did allow up to an hour after the session for individuals to submit some feedback to the review team. And we did learn from this process that there is a need to have a detailed contingency plan to deal with issues arising, in particular around connectivity. So that was one of the learnings for the design elements going forward. So where are we now? Our updates and next steps. We have completed our second virtual review, taking the learning from our pilot and putting that into practice with the University of Limerick. And again, in terms of the process and the virtual methodology, that went very well. And our planning is underway for our third virtual review. So we will be completing our schedule and cycle of reviews for this year. We are envisaging some disruption to the cycle for 2021, and undoubtedly the current public health restrictions and the demands on institutions are having an impact on the institution's capacity to complete their own self-evaluation, self-assessment processes, so that is impacting our schedule for next year. But we're very confident in continuing with the virtual platform, and I suppose are very reassured following this quite detailed evaluation on the efficacy of that process, which is what we had set out to do through this study. So to acknowledge indeed the collaboration through the institutional review process of colleagues in IT Carlow, in particular, David Denieffe, the Vice President Registrar, and Yvonne Kavanag, the Assistant Registrar, and colleagues in QQI, Mairéad Boland, Orla Loughlin, and Kevin Henry, all of which were involved in the completion and coordination of the institutional review pilot, the follow-up evaluation study, and indeed the presentation for EQOF. So thanks to QQI colleagues and colleagues in IT Carlow, and I hope for EQOF colleagues that there is some learning for you that you can take away from our experience in this process. And we are, of course, more than happy for you to contact us and to share any resources and material or guidelines that we have with you. Thank you.